So, without further ado, celebrating their 50th anniversary, would you please welcome Kool and the Gang? Well, thank you very much for coming down to spend a little time with us. So those webisodes give a wonderful kind of backstory to the beginnings of the band, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. But I want to start with something that was more recent, and I mentioned it in the open: the induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. What did you guys think when you got that call?
Well, personally, I was, it hasn't hit me yet still, because I'm pretty numb, and as Khalees was saying, there was so much money in the room, but the whole industry was there that evening.
Yeah.
I know Jermaine Dupri, when he sat and listened to all the different speeches, he thought it was going to be a little minor, affair, and when he seen when Clive walked in and everything, he just said, oh my God, this is a major thing. And we felt the same way. I got a chance to meet Neil Diamond, who I love, great writer. So it still hasn't hit. I just feel just elated. The whole career is a dream and a blessing, and it's because of you guys. So, thank you.
All of a sudden you mentioned Neil Diamond, the people who are enshrined in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. It's a who's who of the industry, and you guys are now there as well. I'm wondering, for you, and as whether it's a hit or an album cut or whatever it might be, how does the song start? How does it start for you? Is it a beat? Is it a melody? What is it? How do songs start?
Well, some in the beginning, it started with a guitar lick, and you hear guitar licks on the very first records. Charles would come in, and he'd start playing those licks, and then everybody joined in, one by one. We just creatively, what I call the collective genius of a band, Kool and the Gang, and we just all created that music on the spot. Most of the time was just right off the cuff.
Yeah. And go ahead.
There was George would start off with a beat, and then I would come in with a bass line. It's like building a house.
Yeah.
Then the keyboard, and then at least with all the horn parts, and eventually we have a song.
Yeah.
Wow, we got a song.
All spontaneous.
And I'm wondering how much of that came from, because clearly, as it said in the video, you guys didn't start funky. You started by listening to jazz, to great jazz music. And I'm wondering how much of that stuff, whether it was John Coltrane or Miles Davis or whoever it might be, kind of rubbed off on you in terms of that improvisational aspect.
Well, totally, I think, because now that I remember when I was smaller than a grasshopper, but I think it's 5 maybe. My father was a prize fighter out of Youngstown, Ohio, and he brought 2 albums home, Roundabout Midnight and Take 5, Dave Brubeck. And I remember hearing, he had brought a stereo home. I remember watching, I used to like to watch the record go around.
Yeah.
And listen to the music. And I remember hearing Bye Bye Blackbird and Roundabout Midnight when I was very young. I didn't know what I was listening to, but I liked it.
Sure, but and talk about some of the what other music were you hearing when you guys were young around the house? What did you hear?
Well, we used to hear Stan Getz and Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, Gloria Lynn,
Yeah.
who's,
Yeah.
The People Who Lived on the Hill was a great song, if you remember. Carolyn. Mouse, Lucky Milliner.
Yeah, Lloyd Price.
Louis Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kidded me because I was listening to the Temptations and Dan Brown. And,
Yeah, well, I wanted to see where where some of that R&B might have come along. So
Well, that came from when we really started backing up a lot of those groups.
yeah,
We had to learn Motown, catalog.
Right.
They all wanted to sing Motown because it was popular at the time.
yeah. What did you guys? I mean, given that you had come from this sort of jazz background, what did you think of Motown and R&B, and what was the thinking there?
Well, trying to avoid it to a degree.
Uh-huh.
With me it was more like, I came up tried to listen to Charlie Parker as much as possible. Herbie Mann was my main guy back in the day.
Yeah.
Not Tito Puente, but Latin music, Mongo Santa Maria, them kind of guys. But personally, like you said in the film, I was trying to avoid the pop music, the Motown stuff. I wasn't feeling. I was into the jazz, man. No, we're not. I'm not there with you.
Yeah.
But once I met all these cats, then I got into the groove because we have a way of just absorbing the music that's happening and utilizing it because we're just musicians from the heart.
Yeah. And when you started backing some of these artists and playing some of that music, clearly, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably realize, oh wait, we have something in this lane that's
Absolutely.
special.
I wanted to mention that Clayton Smith, who loved West Montgomery, was a great proponent with us
Yeah.
in playing jazz and in
Charles
music.
Smith.
Also with the R&B, because Clayton loved R&B, so he was a great proponent in that. I mean, those first licks did come from him.
Yeah.
R&B licks who had a jazz tint to them. He would play chords and the melody at the same time.
Yeah, and he used to like to listen to Major Lance a lot.
Major Lance.
Yeah, Major Lance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
What-
West Montgomery. West Montgomery, though.
And I learned a lot
Charles.
from Charles Clay Smith.
Really? Yeah.
Show me the little parts and
Uh-huh.
we didn't go to school for music.
Yeah.
And so we just listened to the songs and picking up the bass lines. And
Right.
a lot of that stuff again was like Motown. And then we had to back up these artists, so that's kind of how it started developing, playing behind these local talent and moving on up until it became, like you said, the Jazzy Acts. After the Jazzy Acts, Soul Town Band, and then Kool and the Flames.
Yeah.
Kool the Gang.
I have to ask you, I know that there was, you guys played at an amateur night at the Apollo? Yeah. Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Gloria
Or,
Lynn.
first of all, tell us about that experience.
We did many amateur nights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that one, we won first prize. I think it was Gloria Lynn.
First prize?
Yeah, we won that one.
Age
There
is
was no
short.
prize, except for the fact that they love the music.
Right.
We played an original song called "The Bump," I think. Remember? And Honey Coles at the
Honey
time.
But even in Newark, what was the we played? Well, no, that's
Blue
something.
Note.
That's something else.
There was, and there was, you had some competition at the Apollo. Tell me about Willie Feaster and the Mighty. By the way, I want to be in a band called the Mighty Magnificents. That's a goal. But tell me about them.
Willie Feaster
Willie Feaster.
and the Mighty Magnificents,
Yes.
featuring Skip, Sonny, and the Pace Brothers.
A big
One
band.
note, there was no competition for that. Had they had a record? No, they were the best.
They were the best.
Over anything I've ever experienced.
Well, yeah, as far as talent was concerned, they were the most powerful band in New York on the soul scene at the time. And we had to, every now and then we had to go up against them. they had, how many guys? Like 13, 14?
They had Skip something
In
in
the
the
band.
bass, but it was two groups in one. They had the band and they had a singing group.
And a singing group.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we had 7.
And they had 11 or 12.
Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, and well, yeah, but they beat us up so bad that
Oh, this has back
they
together.
befriended us. Yeah, listen,
They were dancing, swinging their horns,
we
stepping
didn't know
out.
anything about it.
Two drummers,
Great
two
singers.
drummers.
Two drummers.
Two
Five
drummers.
horns.
No, it was Arnold
Four
Ramsey.
singers.
Arnold Ramsey was playing.
Yeah, Arnold Ramsey was
He was a great drummer. I mean, Buddy
Yeah.
Rich came out one night to see him. To see Arnold.
Wow,
He was
that's
a
how good he was.
fantastic soloist.
Wow. But and you guys were still, you were instrumental. You
Absolutely.
Yeah. You were playing instrumentals. Tell me about Soul Town. What is Soul Town?
Soul Town was the
band.
review company that we would back up the artists, 6, 7 artists at
Right.
an evening at the Kenya Club and Max's Corner. And this is in Bayonne, New Jersey.
Right.
Anybody from Bayonne here?
Bayonne.
Hey, no one. Okay.
Third for Bayonne.
But Donald Key was he was the Barry Gordy of the Soul Town Review.
Uh-huh.
We cut our teeth, like I said earlier. We cut our teeth on playing behind all these artists,
Yeah.
all the different styles of music, and then we do the band set. And back then, this was long before all of you were born. we had ABC cards, alcoholic beverage committee
Oh, yeah.
cards, which allowed us to play in the clubs. And after performance, we'd either have to sit in the dressing room or go outside. But,
Yeah, I was only 14 years old.
yeah,
Or
absolutely.
15.
15, yeah.
14?
15,
Yeah,
14.
I can't
We
believe
played
that
from
myself.
9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Tuesday through Sunday.
Wow.
And then we had to go to school.
Then we went to school.
And then you had to deal with the first class home teacher,
Man,
Miss Jacobs.
this Jake.
Mr. Jacobs, forever immortalized.
Hello.
Some of your early gigs, it was probably after Soul Town, was in Greenwich Village, at the Cafe Wa.
Yeah, that's true.
First of all, tell me about what you were playing at that time and who you were playing with. Who else was on the bill?
But I think that was a little
Richie
prior.
Havens.
Yeah,
Pardon? Yeah, Richie Havens.
Yeah, Richie
Havens, yeah.
That was a little prior. Was that prior
Richard Pryor.
to the Soul Town Review, or we were already doing that?
No, that was prior.
Prior.
That was prior to Soul Town.
Yes.
Sorry, got my
Yeah.
I used to
chronology.
hang out with a guy. What was his name?
Moose.
Big Moose.
Big Moose.
Big Moose.
Big Moose.
Big Moose. Big. He played conga drums. So I was playing flute. I was playing saxophone, with the mouthpiece backwards.
Yeah, you had the mouthpiece upside down.
Yeah, but we were in Greenwich Village though, and it was nice. We were hanging out. But he was my mentor, so to speak. So he protected me because I was a young cat back then. But we used to hang out at the Y Club and so.
You play for sandwiches,
Yeah,
Right.
it was, every Sunday was Hoot Nanny.
Yeah,
Hoot Nanny.
Nanny.
Yeah, remember Hoot Nanny?
Richie Havens.
Yeah, you get some potato chips and a turkey sandwich.
Yeah, you play for food. You play for food, but it was all good because
Playing
of the
for
music.
food. That's what we do now. Play for food.
Yeah, we got those
You're all
souls
playing
out
for
there,
food.
We still play for food.
Now,
Incidentally, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You talk about Corey. This is a fantastic concerto right here. Dennis Thomas.
Pardon? Thank you, G. Whatever you just said. But we had a great. That was the learning years, the hungry years. We had
the formative years.
the formative years, very hungry. Which made a big difference in with any of us. The hungry years or the years that we learn how to really get our heart and bring our heart to the world and make a difference. In whatever way that we do.
Yeah.
So that was really great times back then. Greenwich Village, that was Greenwich Village out in New York.
Then we found out later that David Lee Roth family owned
Just going to
Cafe
ask you
One.
about that.
Didn't
Yeah.
know that, 5 years ago, we did 48 shows with Van Halen.
With Van Halen. Yeah. So David Lee Roth was coming to see you guys back in the day.
No,
Or was
his
hanging around.
uncle
His
was a
uncle.
Manny
Right,
from
right,
the
yeah.
Cafe War.
Right.
But David saw us in Glastonbury.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, on TV.
Yeah.
But they used to play Hollywood Swing and Jungle Boogie at the clubs here in L.A.
In LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Van Halen told us, I mean, they used to play all Kool the Gang music themselves. You know, so, the perfect match for the tour, too. You know?
So as you guys started to get, a little further along in your career, and you sign a recording deal. First of all, tell about signing your first recording deal. How did that come about?
Oh, we're getting to it now. Okay, sign here.
Well, we were signed to, as my brother mentioned, we
Welcome
were
to the
signed to
record
Gene Red.
Yeah, Gene Red.
Gene Red, right.
It was Red Coach Records.
Actually, our
Coach
mothers,
Production.
we were underage. Our mothers actually signed
Signed
for
the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were illegal.
The thing about Gene,
we weren't really supposed to be in those clubs at that age, but
So
we
we had
were
ABC
that
cards, yeah.
blessed.
but Gene was a Motown writer.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so when we met Gene, he told us, he said, gentlemen, if you want to stay in the industry, you got 5 years if you want to stay R&B, so we got to cross over the pop. And he was 100% right. You know, because that was Barry Gordy's platform in regards to crossing artists over the pop. And Gene and George Clinton were Motown writers back in the day.
Yeah.
And Buzz's cousin,
Cecil, right?
Cecil Holmes.
Cecil Holmes.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to be, a bunch of young guys, playing in clubs, and it's another thing entirely to then go in the studio and start recording. And I'm wondering what the learning curve was as young cats in the recording studio. Talk a little bit about those early experiences recording.
Well, that was all Gene. He took us under his wing, and we rehearsed that first album before we even seen the studio for 6 months.
Absolutely.
6 months? Wow.
Yeah, and he would come in, we'd eat White Castle hamburgers,
Right.
cold,
A White
and
Castle,
yeah, and he used to teach us, he used to listen to what we had creatively, and then he'd take it and add, the commercial value to it. Because, we're jazz musicians, I mean, I play that.
And that helped us a
But
lot.
you couldn't make a mistake. Because then you had to start all over again.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh man, you're the wrong beat. Oh, we gotta do the song over again.
8 tracks back then. The Beatles recorded on
Yeah.
4, and when we came along, it was 8 tracks. So you played it one time. You make a mistake, that's it.
Right.
And for our breaks at rehearsal, Gene would take in New Jersey and Chicago. There's a company called White Castle. And for the breaks, Gene.
Oh, you guys know about that too?
Yeah, White Castle. White Castle breakfast for everyone. Yeah. All right, let's do it. And he would take us to White Castle. We buy fish burgers and and cheeseburgers, and then go back to rehearsal.
Well, that's how we survived, for real.
Yeah.
And that first album, the first album was, we were hungry just getting into it.
Sure.
The studio part with Gene Red. We were already kind of, we were musically oriented, and we had developed to a certain degree, with our chops and so on. But Gene came in and he took us into the studio experience. But I think we were ready for it.
We were ready.
But he was the right guy.
Yeah.
And you know who else we had in the studio, which made a big difference, was Malcolm Addy back then, the engineer. He was English, so he had a whole different bent on how bands should sound. That's one of the reasons why we sounded the way we did. It was big pan parts.
Yeah, they didn't have any faders back then. Well, a fader, up
Yeah,
and
it was
down.
these
They didn't have faders.
Big
They
knob.
had big knobs.
Big knob pan
Yeah,
parts.
that's-
Yeah.
Listen, you guys, I knew nothing about this, okay? I just showed up when they said, okay, we're getting ready to play.
We're gonna play. So the other thing, especially listening to the first couple of records, is this is instrumental music, but there's no meandering, there's no excessive soloing. It's tight. It's really tight. And intentional on your part to be that way, not to get carried away, because obviously coming from the jazz background, you certainly could if you wanted. talk about kind of the arrangements of those early
The
records.
discipline of that was Gene.
That was Gene.
That was, well, Gene polished it off.
Yeah.
We learned that by playing Hold On, I'm Coming,
Yeah, right.
and a lot of Stevie Wonder, James Brown, a lot of Motown music, has very, organized or
Yeah.
arranged. So we learned that when we had that experience with the Soul Town
Showtime
band.
review.
Yeah.
And then when Gene came, we've always created music, but it was never like my favorite is like John Coltrane in his later years.
Right.
But to understand John Coltrane in his later years, you have to go back to where he began. And then you'd understand that he was not making noise, he was making music all the way through. It's just a higher level of it.
Right.
But that's what happened. Gene taught us to be more disciplined in
Yeah.
what we did.
And
Except
then-
for when
and
I got live, then I took John Coltrane solos.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then
Live shows.
the second and third records were live records,
Yeah.
which, first of all, at that time, pretty unusual to be making live albums.
Yeah, I think he got that idea to make that album, Live at the Sex Machine, from James Brown,
Right.
the Apollo Live.
Yes.
That album done so well, I think
Yeah.
he just followed in the footsteps of making a live album.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
right now,
PJs is
live
what
at
we,
PJs.
PJs, when we first came to California, was that when we first came to California? PJs?
Second time.
Second time?
we played
Well, what
the
were we
Toros
doing
first.
here the first time?
Does anyone know?
All I remember is PJs, okay.
It was on,
we
Santa
go
Monica
Maverick
Boulevard
Flats and
and
some of those
Crescent
other
Heights.
clubs.
We played Mavericks Flats. Everybody know Mavericks Flats back then?
Flats,
yeah.
Well,
But you know who came to see, I'm sorry. That evening, I mean, it was all Motown. We were opening for Gladys Knight. So Barry Gordy was there, the whole Motown family was there, and we got a knock on the door, right? And Clayton Smith opens the door and he said, "Who are you guys?" And they said, "We're the Jacksons."
I remember that.
And he said, "We know." When he came in, and from that point to now, we just finished touring with the Jacksons in
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand. We've been buddies all these years.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about some of the touring with the Jacksons in a minute. So there were a few more releases, and then comes Wild and Peaceful. And Wild and Peaceful kind of took things to a different level. Is that how you guys felt about it? Was that a leap for you?
No, the record company said, you guys got to come up with a hit.
Ah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
so there was a little outside pressure.
Yeah, the album before that was
Always.
Good Times, I think.
Yeah.
It was very artistic. We wanted to be like, we were writing Jim Webb, all kinds of that, the music of the 70s back
Sure.
then. We wanted to create music like that,
Yeah.
strings and everything. So the record company said, this is not selling. You guys got to come up with a hit. Let's bring Gene back in. Gene comes back in and says, okay, we're going to record Soul Makusa. And at that time, Soul Makusa was a hot record.
Big
Yes.
record.
But we said, no, we're not doing Soul Makusa.
Not doing that.
No, we're going to come up with our own Soul Makusa. And we, in a matter of like 24 hours, we came up with funky stuff, Hollywood Swinging, Jungle Boogie. Dennis is the one who named it Wild and Peaceful, because one side was wild, and the other side
Side
was
was
peaceful.
peaceful. Right.
Yeah,
We came up with Boogie.
the boogie
We
thing.
called it
We
like
put jungle on top of it and said, well,
Jungle, jazz,
24
jungle.
hours. It only took 24 hours
Did
to
you
make
do that in
music.
the studio? Were you writing all that
We
stuff in the
went to
studio?
the rehearsal in the morning
Yeah.
at Baggies,
Maggie's, downtown in the village.
and we made this stuff up on the spot. And we recorded it that night. Some of those records only one take. And here's your Soul Makusa.
But
Did you guys-
tell
Go ahead.
the real story? Tell the real story.
What happened?
That is the real story.
Well, it was very
Tell the story with that attorney.
Oh man, that
Yeah,
that came after.
You want to talk about that for real?
Let's talk about that. let's talk
But it was a very prolific time.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
stick with the music.
yeah, but you want to hear a story? Yeah, see that?
Your attorney now is actually here, so you're covered, no matter what.
No. Well, he didn't go through all of that with us, I don't think. Who's the attorney back there? But I'd rather stay with the music.
No, he's like Fortune 500 now. He's a major.
Oh, you talking about Alan Grubman?
Alan Grubman, yeah. No, he's
No,
heard the name.
no,
I've
Alan
heard the name.
Grubman. Alan taught us a great lesson.
absolutely.
He said, fellas, when you learn that this is a business, then you're gonna make some money. And that's what Alan taught us. And we chased Alan around the room. Remember, at the Songwriters Hall of Fame, Alan was
Yeah,
running
we
around.
went over this big.
Alan, he's running.
I also,
They asked me for a deal.
Well, then
I
you gotta go.
remember when we had the meeting with him, when he said they want some expletive hit records, and then we, Khalees and myself were walking down 7th Avenue, and that's when the magic started happening. Because he said like this, fellas, my wife is waiting for me at Kennedy Airport, I'm going to Paris, goodbye, and he left the room.
Business. He was hardcore businessman.
Call business and
Well, other than that, though, going back to talking about Gene Red, we were signed to Gene Red Productions, and I get these guys came over from Brooklyn, knocked on my door, and they said, "Listen, that Gene Red, we want to do something different. You guys gonna have to sign us."
How was
I said,
that?
"What
Hello.
is this?" But this is how you're gonna make it.
You guys have to watch the movie to see
I
that.
see.
part.
Yeah, I don't do the book on the movie.
so there were divergent outside
Yeah, I
forces
can.
involved.
You guys don't want to hear these horror stories.
Well, and there's plenty of time for that. I do have one good Alan Grubman quote, who one time said to me, "It's not about the money, it's about the money." So that will give you a picture there.
Okay, that's profound. Okay.
Well,
I have a saying that I say that
yeah,
you live and learn, and then you learn to live.
there you go.
When you go through those ups and downs.
Go to Songwriters, you ain't hear it?
Yeah.
So there was a
Cool's got 100,000 of those phrases. I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
no.
Yeah.
There was certainly a time there, and it might have been around the period that you were getting ready to record Wild and Peaceful, where you were kind of living a little bit in both worlds. There was an R&B thing, and you had somewhat of a jazz thing going on.
Right, always.
How did you kind of, if you will, serve both
Two masters.
audiences? How'd you do that?
Well, after a
It
couple
was
of years,
fun,
you
yeah.
got a family, right? And you gotta make money.
Right.
We weren't making that much money in the jazz because, you had to really, jazz is an art form that you really work at.
Yeah.
And,
But we
Hold
were
on, I'm coming.
we
It
were
was real
doing
easy to
back
put
then. We were doing like the Sugar Shack in Boston,
Yeah.
and then a few months later we'd be at Paul Mall's, which is the jazz club. So it was fun to
Right,
do so. Yeah.
Right. So you had gigs going
Both genres,
on both sides.
just like
of the,
tomorrow.
and one album that we did,
Yes.
I'm sorry, was Music is the Message album,
Uh-huh.
where we had won 5.5 stars in Downbeat magazine or something, when we wrote that song, I Love the Life You Live.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Did you when you guys you were talking about writing all that incredible music in 24 hours? When you went into the studio to work, did you prefer to work quickly? Was working quickly, rather than laboring on stuff?
Okay, let me just say this real quick. As I recall it, we were going to the studio because this was a prolific time for us,
Yes.
to put it in that term. It was prolific. All we had to do was show up. And it became, okay, all right, well, let's play. And then we would feed off of ideas
Yeah.
and create, right?
Is that with each
Is
other?
that it?
Yeah, that's some of the early hits again, Charles, would come in with those licks
Yeah.
that you hear throughout the record.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 2 of them distinctively. If you listen to Kool the Gang, the first record, When we first made that song, Charles walked in and he started playing, you know, started playing that line. And everybody looked at each other and we just chimed in together. And again, I call it the collective genius of a band called Kool the Gang. The second time, each pivot point, there was a part where Charles came in, like with funky stuff. He came in and just started playing that lick on funky stuff that I think Prince tried to play one time. You know funky stuff. If anybody know funky stuff? You know funky stuff, right? Kool the Gang is, and that he played that, and we all chimed in, and that was it. And it was all synergy with us.
Yeah.
Adele says, our manager now says that just you guys get together and that energy, that magic starts happening. No matter how long we hadn't been in the studio, but as soon as we go in, it just starts. It's the same energy.
Particularly back in that time, though.
Yeah.
Particularly back in that time that you're talking about, when those three songs manifest, we were just in a certain kind of zone. And I guess because of the pressure that Kelly's talking about from the record company, then, I mean, I don't know, man. The universe speaks as it speaks. And we listen musically. So hence, you know, and that's for any creative person, you know. You're open and you hear. And we were there at the time, and that's kind of how we've been in the business all these years, I guess. And we stimulate and seek to bring music forward from a spiritual standpoint, particularly, but music speaks in a certain kind of way. You know, and fortunately, we were blessed to kind of hear it. You know, these cats, you know, we all hear it when we get together. You know, we need to get together again soon, right, GB?
Hello.
Well, -3, but still together.
And I imagine certainly, you know, during that, as you say, prolific period, you had already been together for a number of years. And I'm wondering if it becomes, and you know, tell me about this, if it becomes a little bit like, you know, a sports team of some kind, where you know each other's, you know where each other, you know, is going in a tune. You know, you can kind of predict it, and you know, that level of understanding and collaboration allows you to create great music. Is that how you guys work?
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
The collective genius of a band
Oh, the
called
band.
Kool the Gang.
There was, I mean, there came a suggestion, before I get to that, in the '80s, you were talking about the Jacksons, and you were touring with the Jacksons in the '80s. Tell me a little bit about some of your experiences with the Jacksons, particularly watching them do what they did in those years.
Yeah, we were on tour with the Jacksons, and the promoter, a guy by the name of Dick Griffey, and he had Soul Out Records. And he came to us and said, you know, you guys are doing good, but you know what? We said, what? I think you need a lead singer. I said, what? Lead singer? So we thought about it, and we thought about it, and we thought about it. And I said, well, you had Maurice White, Philip Bailey, Earth, Wind & Fire.
Yeah.
Lionel Richie, the Commodores. I said, that might not be a bad idea, because they were burning records in Chicago, disco socks, and all kind of stuff was going on. And that's when we decided to get a lead singer.
Yeah. And how'd you find JT?
We were working at Studio House of Music,
Oh.
and I think that our manager at the time, Val Hackett, knew him from a band called Philly Soul or something.
Yeah.
And we, at that point, we were auditioning singers, and he was the first one we auditioned, and that was it.
Yeah, we didn't audition anybody else.
Yeah, he didn't sing anything. I just had to sing a note, sing this note, sing that note. Yeah, you can sing, let's go.
That worked out pretty well. And you also, around that time or shortly thereafter, met Umir,
Diodato?
Diodato.
Yeah, he was working at the same studio at
Yeah,
the
they
House
all
of
have
Music.
a-
All
Yeah.
happened around the same time. Well, he became, your collaboration with him, obviously produced all manner of remarkable music. Tell me a little bit about that collaboration, because, the producer-artist relationship can make or break things. Why did it work so well?
Well, Dio is a musician, composed string arranger, pianist, guitarist, and right there we had the connection.
Yeah.
And the connection was there. He loved what we had done in the past, and he wanted to come in and organize, as he said, and that's what he did, and everything from that point went platinum. And he became just like a big brother to all of us.
Yeah.
He loved the band. He's a big advocate for it still today, and Dio still tours today. So,
He does?
Yes, he does.
Wow. That's not me.
Oh, must be for me. It's Diodato. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about a couple of songs, because I've read some interesting things, particularly about Open Sesame. Did the Nutcracker Suite have something to do with that?
Yes, it did. 4th grade. A teacher, I remember, made us sit down and listen to that all from the beginning to the end.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember that. Something like that. I remember that in my head. It was in my head already. So when we got to Open Sesame, the track that kind of like bled over, into that song.
And there was something else about the Banana Splits, that kids television show, which I happen to remember from the '60s.
I don't remember that.
All right, I could have been.
Banana Splits?
I may have been having a flashback at the moment.
Well, I just want to say one thing about Diodato again.
Yes.
And Open Sesame.
Yeah.
Well, when we met Dio's a genius. We had recorded the album Ladies Night before Dio joined us, and before even James. We had the music recorded already. So we were geared up because, record company again, you guys got to come up with a hit.
Gotta have a hit.
And all that creative music is not working in the commercial market. So Dio came in and said, well, that song, Open Sesame. I can't say what he said. He was in Coney Island. And his kids were on the Matterhorn. I can't say what he said. He said, oh, who the is that? And he said, ever since then, he had respect for the band after that song. And he taught us a lot.
Yeah.
He steered us in the right way.
Yeah.
At that point.
And after Ladies Night, you were, celebrating the success, pun fully intended there, of that, and this is where, the iconic song "Celebrate" comes around. Tell me about the inspiration behind that song.
Ladies' Night?
No, Celebrate.
Well, Ladies Night, Celebration came after Ladies Night,
Right.
and led up to that.
Yeah.
Again, when JT joined the band. And I think George came up with these tracks, and he had the music. And I was hanging out in New York, my wife and I. And every weekend it was a Ladies Night. I said, well, that might be a good idea. I came back to the guys. I got 2 concepts. One was hanging out, because that's what I was doing. And the other one was Ladies Night. And that was the very first record with JT. And Frankie Crocker, the Hollywood Swinger from New York, broke that record in New York. Okay, now they took us to the American Music Award, we won 2 American Music Awards, and then Celebration came out.
Well, celebrate. On the end, we're saying let's all celebrate.
Yeah.
And I went home, but actually I was on 7th Avenue in Sheridan, and I was reading a scripture where the angels are celebrating God for creating man. That's where I got the initial idea for a celebration. The celebration was going on there where God was creating the human. And that's where the song came. The initials for me, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
That's why everyone around the world, come on, let's celebrate. That's what the initial intention of the song was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns into a celebration.
Yeah. And I mean, that song has become, you know, an institution on its own. You know, it is played at every wedding, every bar mitzvah, every sports championship. It's played everywhere. And you know, I'm wondering for you guys, where does the satisfaction come? Does it come because, you know, it's been around for so long and people still, you know, enjoy this in a very special way? Does it come because it's sold, you know, millions or whatever? Where does that satisfaction come from for you?
Well, for me, again, it came from reading that scripture.
So it's spiritual.
Yeah, it's spiritual for me.
Yeah.
You know, the rest of us.
Well, for me, it's performing. It's performing that song each night. And when we're on stage, it's pretty organic. Even though it's like, it's tight and right, but it's pretty organic. And the interplay with the audience. So that's where the satisfaction comes in for me. And I believe it's cool. I believe all three of my brothers are the same way. It's just the pleasure of performing for everyone.
Yeah.
It's true.
And it's something you couldn't repeat, try to make another celebration. We tried a little bit, a couple other tracks. No, that was it. That closed the book. Celebration,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to leave that alone.
Yeah.
Picture that. Just picture that again. I'm not going to keep
No, go ahead.
spinning the wheel. All the angels, right? Just the description of it, are witnessing God create the human being. Now that is a celebration for all of us, isn't it? That's when we first came into existence.
You know, music is so much a collaborative art form. You know, it's about a group of musicians, singers, whomever, getting together and creating something. What makes you guys good collaborators? Why have you been able to do this for so long?
Is Adele in the audience? Who? Adele.
Our manager.
What do you want him to
It's an
do?
inside joke, ladies and gentlemen.
No, because he knows he's watched this for so long, manifest. But it's the message. See, music is the message in our lives in many ways. Music is so profound in so many ways, and we've just been blessed to be together, doing what we do for so long. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight and listening to our jazz. Really appreciate it.
One of the other things I mentioned in the open is you are one of, if not the most sampled band. And now that's sort of a standard, well understood thing. It wasn't, I don't think, when people started sampling you. And I'm wondering at first, what did you think about that? What did you think when you heard your creation being appropriated in that way?
Honored.
Honored.
It's honored.
It's art.
Well, we're gonna put somebody out on sample patrol.
But that came a little later, where you had to start policing. You had to start policing that a little bit.
Yeah, before they used to get away with that
I
until
think
they
it-
passed a law in Washington.
Remember when Madonna first sampled and we all went up to our attorney's office to listen? We had to listen for the sample, right? There it is.
We used to sample without the technology. Hollywood Swing. Anybody know? Does anybody know Hollywood Swing? Okay, in the front of Hollywood Swinging, and when it opens up, now listen to this very closely. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Is that not John Philip Sousa? Is it not? Listen again. Da 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 da. Right? Da 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 da. Right? And here, funky stuff. So, I would say that this is the same thing. We just
in the modern world.
Never quite heard that before.
Copyright infringement, but not going
Yeah.
all the way.
Hello. So fair warning, we're gonna ask for a couple questions from the House here in a minute. What advice would you give? And I'm sure you've been asked this question before. What advice would you have for a young musician starting out today? What would you tell a young man or a young woman is the most important thing they might need to do to pursue a life in music?
Well, you have to be serious what you're doing, and have a love for the music, and work hard at that. Because it takes time to develop, success. Sometimes they say only the strong survive. So you can't give up. You have to continue to work, even in the good times and the bad times. You can get a hit record, 2 hit records. 2 years later, you back down bottom of the mountain again, looking up. Well, what happened to us? Well, you gotta get another hit. But those are learning process. So you have to be serious about what you're doing, and I have to say, get you a good attorney. Pay your taxes. Pay your taxes, because that partner is always there. So what I'm saying is just be serious about what you're doing.
So we got time for 1 or 2 questions from the House. It's a good-looking group. Wow, on a Friday. Did everybody get shy all of a sudden? Yes, right there.
Is there a particular artist right now that really excites you, what they're doing?
Current artist that excites you.
Current.
Is there a current artist that excites you?
I like Charlie Puth.
Charlie Puth.
Yeah.
We've had him here. Yeah.
On the funk side, I would say Bruno Mars. Yeah. He's like a young Kool in the Gang.
The pop side is Katy Perry for me.
He'll do. Yes, right here. Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much. Great information about you guys. What inspired you to write Joanna?
Ah.
And
And did Toto have anything to do with that?
A little bit.
Well, Clayton Smith, that was his composition.
Who is not here today, God bless him.
Physically. Charles wrote that song for his mother. It was called Dear Mom when he first wrote it.
And then also, it was what was the movie that was going to go in with Chevy Chase, or who was it? Yeah, Dear Mom, it was for his mother.
I just remember that it was for his mother.
Yeah.
And then that story has some skullduggery behind it.
We love the skullduggery.
You want to hear it? Okay.
Skullduggery.
Now, you can't steal other people's music, right? So anyway, you saw Rosanna.
Yeah.
Oh, let's write a song, with a girl's name in it. Right? Like Rosanna. So we're in the studio, after we reformed the music to be more pop. And somebody had it in their head already that it was Joanna, but they had heard somebody sent other song. Someone sent a song in. It was called Joanna. And I think the producer at the time didn't say anything. He said, "Oh, it's a song with Joanna." Oh, that might work. So we finished the song and everything, and then did a
Dear
phone
Mama
call.
wasn't working with the track too, though. When you tried this, because we tried a little bit of time singing Dear Mom. It wasn't working with
It wasn't working.
We love you, Mama, but then we always love my mama. But, it didn't quite work.
So anyway, what happened? Joanna. Okay, after we finished the song, here comes Mr. Unknown. Well, that's my song. We had never heard the song before. And he came in, he had a deposition, he played it. The only difference was, 3 notes. So, Joanna, Joanna, that's how his song went. I was Joanna, I love you, not that much difference. But it's settled.
It was Dan Aykroyd.
You worked it out.
We worked.
You worked it
It was
out.
Dan Aykroyd, remember that?
Yes, right here.
In the movie Pulp Fiction, you you've got a Jungle Boogie's in the soundtrack, and the Samuel Jackson character uses, to say cool, he says Kool and the Gang. I imagine you knew about the song being in the movie. Did you know
Yeah.
that the dialogue was going to have that reference to Kool and the Gang?
Well, not in the movie, but that was the saying in Chicago and Philadelphia.
Everywhere.
Everything's cool again. But Quentin Tarantino we didn't know, was a big fan of Kool the Gang. You know, and that's how that all came about.
Yes, right there.
What about with Open Sesame and Saturday Night Fever?
Skullduggery.
One of them deals.
Skullduggery.
That was,
Okay. Oh, what about that?
You're among friends, so it's okay.
Okay, we got this movie we're making, and we want some music for it. La 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 la, you know, yada yada yada, blank blank blank. You guys got a chance to be on the soundtrack. Okay, right? Alan knows about this. That's when we said, yeah, when you guys figure this out, you gotta make some money. So we had to do something to make that happen. So we did something. That was vague, wasn't it? I didn't tell you anything.
That was a little
You
trade-off.
gotta watch the movie.
Okay, so that's-
But how we got on Saturday Night Fever?
Yeah.
Like that?
And that's your research project for this evening. Who else? Did I see it? Oh, maybe that's
Trying to get me in trouble. I can
okay.
tell that story.
So last question. It was announced recently that you are going to receive the Marian Anderson Award in Philadelphia, I believe later this year. You are the 2019 recipients, and you know the list of folks who've received that award previously is remarkable. Harry Belafonte, Elizabeth Taylor, Quincy Jones, Oprah Winfrey, Sidney Poitier, Maya Angelou, Berry Gordy. Tell me what that, and this is recognizing philanthropic achievement, you know, career achievements. What does that kind of recognition mean to you?
Wow, that's a big question. To me, it's not a culmination of a career, but it's beyond what I had imagined. And I know for all of us, we knew that the career was going to take a wonderful upswing. But it's beautiful, and it also shows how far we've come as a people here in the United States, because Mary Anderson had to sing out in frigid weather because I believe it was the daughters of the Constitution. They wouldn't allow her to sing inside for Franklin Delano Roosevelt's inauguration. And as I said earlier, we actually played Constitutional with the U.S. Air Force Band. And to me, it just shows you how far we've come in the United States in regards to race relations. And so that within itself is satisfaction that this prestigious award is given to us and all the other luminaries in the past. Not that we're luminaries, but it just shows how far we come. That's my feelings.
Yeah.
It's a great honor.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly tell you from our perspective, you are luminaries, and we are so that you gentlemen took the time to come down and have this chat and share some of the webisode stuff. There's going to be more coming in July. We love you. We wish you nothing but the best. Ladies and gentlemen, Kool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.